We've all heard about Donald Trump's father, Fred Trump, the relentless real estate mogul who shaped his son's empire and ego. Donald mentions him constantly, but his mother, Mary Ann Trump, hardly a word, and that's telling.
My mother was a great person. So much of what I've done and so much of what I've become is because of my mother.
Born on June 14th, 1946 in Queens, New York, Donald was the fourth of 5 children in the Trump family. His siblings include his older sisters Mary Ann and Elizabeth, his brother Fred, and his younger brother Robert. Donald's dad, Fred, was loud, commanding, and obsessed with success. Meanwhile, his mom, Mary, she was this elegant Scottish immigrant who came to the US at just 18 years old, beautiful, proper, and religious.
Where were you born?
In a little town called Stornoway, with the island of Lewis, way up in the Hebrides.
But behind that polished exterior was a woman who went through some serious health issues. When Donald was just 2 years old, Mary nearly died during childbirth. She had major complications after delivering Donald's younger brother, Robert. Emergency surgery, a long recovery. And during that time, she was mostly absent from little Donald's life.
It's not been easy for me.
Now, psychologists say that when young kids don't get consistent care from their mothers, especially during those early years, they can grow up with what's called avoidant attachment. And if you're wondering what that means, think of someone who doesn't trust people easily, avoids intimacy, and prides themselves on being totally self-reliant. Sound familiar?
I am the chosen one.
Yes, it's basically a play-by-play of how Trump presents himself. He often brags that he doesn't need anyone, that he doesn't have time for self-doubt, that he's always been the smartest person in the room.
You're not known to be a humble man, but I wonder.
I think I am actually humble. I think I'm much more humble than you would understand.
Trump surrounds himself with people, but rarely seems to form deep friendships. And even in romantic relationships, 3 marriages later, the pattern continues.
So why didn't you marry her right away when you found out she was pregnant? Why did you
Indecision.
wait? Indecision.
Really indecision.
So, what about Mary? Well, Donald has said she was fantastic, tremendous, very loving. But here's the thing. There are almost no stories or memories to back that up. Family friends who knew the Trumps when the kids were little said they hardly ever saw Mary around. In fact, they say Donald seemed very detached from her. It was Fred who got his admiration, Fred who Donald tried to impress. And here's where it gets even more interesting.
So I watched my father, so I like to work.
People with avoidant attachment often idealize their parents, even when there's not much real evidence to support it. It's like they've memorized a script instead of remembering real moments. Trump's praise of his mom sounds just like that. He says she was beautiful, that she had great taste, and like to say, trust in God and be true to yourself. That's pretty much it. No deeper stories, no warm childhood memories, just polished, surface-level lines.
My mother was a great person.
Even when Trump visited his mother's childhood home on the Isle of Lewis in Scotland, he stayed for all of, wait for it, 97 seconds. 97! He said he was honoring her memory with his Scottish golf course, made all these grand promises to donate to local charities and restore a castle.
My mother never lost her feeling for Scotland. She loved Scotland more than anything.
But, surprise, surprise, none of that really happened. It's like he wanted to be seen doing something for her, but didn't actually want to connect with who she was. And if you take a moment to compare Mary Trump to Donald's first wife, Ivana, well, the resemblance is striking. The same glamorous blonde hair, similar facial features, that polished, commanding presence. It's hard not to notice. It's like he married a version of his mother. Freud would have had a field day in Trump Tower, no doubt. But perhaps the most telling quote of all comes from Mary herself. According to reports, during Donald's messy divorce from Ivana, Mary turned to her daughter-in-law and said, "What kind of son have I created?" Yikes. And let's not forget, Donald's always loved being the center of attention. He says he got his showmanship from his mother. But researchers say that kind of constant need to be in the spotlight isn't always just about confidence. Sometimes it's about needing to be seen. Because deep down, maybe you felt unseen when it mattered most. Donald grew up in a home where love was scarce, replaced by strict discipline, harsh criticism, and relentless pressure to succeed at any cost.
And achievement is something that really gives you great pleasure.
The Trumps lived in Jamaica Estates, an upscale neighborhood in Queens. And while life in a fancy house might sound nice, inside those walls it was all about discipline, success, and, most importantly, making sure Fred Trump was impressed. Fred wasn't the doting type. When Donald did get his father's attention, it often came in the form of scolding, ridicule, or punishment.
He loved to work. He'd work on Saturdays, he'd work on Sundays. He just liked it. He'd go to church, but after church he'd go and work.
He grew up in an environment where emotions were a sign of weakness, and success was the only thing that mattered. And losing? That was never an option.
Winning is easy, losing is never easy.
To make things worse, Donald had a front row seat to his father's mistreatment of his older brother, Freddie. Fred Trump had a clear idea of what a real man should be. Ruthless, ambitious, and completely dedicated to the family business. But Freddie was different, sensitive, easygoing, and passionate about flying. Fred Sr. saw that as a total betrayal. He would mock Freddie, calling him a bus driver in the sky, making sure his son knew just how much he had disappointed him.
I learned myself. I had a brother, Fred. Great guy.
In 1964, 18-year-old Donald and his younger brother Robert visited Freddie at his home in Marblehead, Massachusetts. By then, Freddie had distanced himself from the family business, choosing a career as a pilot, something their father saw as a disgrace. Donald wasted no time delivering Fred's cruel verdict. "Dad's really sick of you wasting your life," he told Freddie. Freddie's story didn't have a happy ending. The pressure and humiliation pushed him toward alcoholism, and by the age of 42, he was gone.
And he had a very, very, very tough life because of alcohol, believe me.
His death left a mark on Donald, who later claimed it was the reason he never touched alcohol.
And to this day, I've never had a drink. And I have no longing for it.
But it also reinforced the lesson he had learned from his father. Weakness is unacceptable, and failure is unforgivable. He was a pretty rough fellow when he was small, Fred once said about Donald. It was clear that Donald was not only the favorite child, but Fred saw him as his protege. That status came with a price. Fred was even harder on his youngest boy.
He's the fellow who threw an eraser and gave a teacher a black eye and would throw cake around a birthday party. So I can imagine him as being a little terror.
When 13-year-old Donald started acting out, Fred didn't sit him down for a talk. He sent him away. Determined to mold his son into a winner and strengthen him out, Fred sent 13-year-old Donald to the New York Military Academy, a place designed to instill obedience and resilience.
And I can tell you that one of the great choices I ever made in terms of success was the choice of going to NYMA, New York Military Academy.
At the academy, Donald thrived, not despite the strict discipline, but because of it. The drills, the hierarchy, the competition, it all mirrored the world his father had built at home. And just like Fred, Donald learned that power came from force and control.
I loved it. It was terrific training. It was tough, but it was good.
And here's where things get even darker. According to Mary Trump, Donald's father was a high-functioning sociopath. Her book, Too Much and Never Enough, paints a chilling picture. Fred was manipulative, cold, and obsessed with power. In order to cope, Mary wrote, Donald developed powerful but primitive defenses, marked by an increasing hostility to others. He feared that if he showed vulnerability, he'd be crushed, just like his brother Freddie. Even Donald himself has admitted the impact his father had on him. Journalist Tony Schwartz, who actually wrote The Art of the Deal, recalled Trump once saying, "That's why I'm so screwed up, because I had a father who pushed me so hard." It was a rare moment of self-awareness and vulnerability from a man who rarely acknowledges his past. Donald's relationship with his father took a turn as Fred began to show signs of dementia in the mid-1990s. People recalled how Fred, then in his late 80s, didn't recognize two of his children at a family gathering at Mar-a-Lago. When he did recognize Donald, Fred approached him with a picture of a Cadillac he wanted to buy, seeking his son's approval, as if he needed it. This incident left Donald visibly shaken. It shattered his view of his father, the man he had always seen as a powerful, unwavering authority, suddenly looking weak and vulnerable.
Well, I think my greatest inspiration was my father, Fred C. Trump. He was a builder. He was a great guy. He was my friend.
Medical records later confirmed that Fred had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, which Donald reflected on in a 1997 interview with Playboy. He expressed his confusion about life's meaning, saying, Seeing my father addled with Alzheimer's had left me wondering out loud about the senselessness of life.
If you start thinking about that, bad things happen.
At Fred's funeral in June 1999, however, Donald's response remained anything but empathetic. Instead of focusing on his father's life, he began his eulogy by talking about his own success, reflecting on the greatest year of his business career. This could be seen as a reflection of what Donald believed would have mattered most to his father: success. Fred, after all, had always emphasized the importance of winning, and Donald's business triumphs were likely the most significant way he felt connected to the legacy Fred had left behind.
We need competence. Enough with the niceness.
And what do you think? Did Fred's brutal parenting create the Trump we see in the public eye, or is there more to the story? How much of the man Trump became was truly his father's doing? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.